Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from a UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Now today let us take up these important articles which has appeared in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 20th November 2021. The news to be discussed has been displayed on the screen and timestamping for these have been provided in the YouTube description. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion. So let's start our discussion with these important news, especially with respect to yesterday's announcement of Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister has decided to repeal the 3 farm laws. So multiple news have appeared for this purpose, and we have taken this news appearing on page number 1 as a lead article on page number 6 and also as an editorial on page number 6. So this news says that government relents, decides to spike farm laws. Prime Minister announces repeal of the 3 acts in address to the nation. He says the process will be completed in the winter session of the parliament, that is the act of repealing of these 3 farm laws. And the Prime Minister also apologizes to nation for not being able to convince farmers of the benefits of these 3 farm laws. Further, this lead article on page number 6 says that this is a defeat of hubris, a confrontation on hold. Now, more or less, this article has been written with a political perspective, but from our examination perspective, let's understand certain key highlights which this article has written, especially with respect to the concerns on APMCs and also about the Model Act on Agricultural Marketing. And this editorial says that seeds of hope. So after this repeal, the farmers should withdraw their protest and push for consultations in effort to reform the agriculture sector. So in this analysis, let us understand about the agricultural mandis which has been constituted under the state laws through the APMCs of states and also the concerns. Further, let's also understand about the Model Act on Agricultural Marketing, what this act provided for, and the basic fact with respect to the 3 farm laws and what they intended to achieve. Now this topic becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 3, particularly economic development, transport and marketing of agricultural produce and issues and related constraints. So this topic has been directly provided in the syllabus of UPSC under GS paper 3. Hence all these articles, particularly with respect to agricultural produce, becomes important from the mains and prelims perspective. Now the problem with respect to the state APMCs is that it restricts the farmer with respect to selling their farm produce. So a farmer can only sell their farm produce only to a registered agricultural mandi under the state APMCs. So the farmer does not enjoy the freedom of choice with respect to selling of their crops outside the state mandis. And based on this concern, the central government came up with a Model Act on Agricultural Marketing in 2003. Now the problem was that agriculture has been provided in the state list of the 7th schedule. So the central government by themselves could not make a law. So they made a Model Act on Agricultural Marketing 2003, which also allowed for an additional area where the farmers could sell their produce and asked the state to implement this Model Act on Agricultural Marketing. So a need was felt by the central government way back in 2003 to come up with a Model Act on Agricultural Marketing. And based on this Model Act on Agricultural Marketing of 2003, the government then came up with these 3 farm laws, of which one of them was the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020. And this law enabled the farmers and traders the freedom of choice relating to sale and purchase of farmers' produce even outside the APMC mandis, which was regulated by their respective state law. So it says that the reform through this particular act, which was one of the farm laws, grants freedom to farmers and buyers to transact in agricultural commodities even outside the notified mandis, thereby ensuring competitive alternative trading channels. So effectively, this law provided an alternative selling option apart from the state notified APMCs or state agricultural mandis to the farmers and traders to sell their produce. And this would have led to competition in the market, and also this would have helped to promote efficient, transparent and barrier-free interstate and intrastate trade. So, these were said to be some of the reasons as to why the government had come up with the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020, as it provided an alternative selling option to the farmers other than the notified state APMC agricultural mandis. So, because of lack of option for the farmers to sell outside the registered state APMC mandis, a need was felt to reform the APMCs. So, it was argued that reform of the state APMCs would lead to diversification of cropping pattern, and this would lead to increase export oriented and high valued crops, and this would have also helped to increase farmers' income. Now, if farmers are producing these export oriented and high valued crops, then the farmer should have been able to sell directly to the private players for export of these crops. So it was felt that there is a need to give way to private markets, future markets and also contract farming. And farmers should have been allowed to directly sell to the private players. So based on this, the second point of concern was that these state registered APMCs prevented the farmers to sell directly to big corporate buyers and also exporters. So the need was felt that the state APMCs must be amended so that any private market or a rural collection center can freely emerge anywhere without the approval of local mandis or without paying any mandi tax or any other tax levied and collected by the state APMCs. So in this regard, another area of concern is that these state registered APMCs levy multiple fees of substantial magnitude that are non-transparent in nature and hence becomes a source of political power, especially between state officials and those sellers who get their license to sell in the state registered APMCs. Now, another area of concern is the presence of these intermediaries between the buyers and the farmers in state registered APMCs. So these intermediaries, or we can say commissioning agents, also charge fees for the whole transaction which take place between the farmer and the buyer. So including the fees charged by these commissioning agents or intermediaries along with the multiple levies introduced by these state registered APMCs can be said to be a source of market distortion, and it also leads to a cascading effect on the price of agricultural commodities as the agricultural commodities passes through the several supply chains. Now, another area of concern is that the revenue earned by the state registered APMCs do not go to the state exchequer, and hence these APMCs does not require the approval of state legislature to utilize the funds so collected. So we can say that there are certain opacity with respect to utilization of funds which is collected through these multiple levy of taxes by the state registered APMCs. So overall, these can be said to be some of the major reasons as to why it was thought necessary to reform the state registered APMCs, where the farmers are forced to sell their agricultural produce. And because of these, the central government not only asked the state governments to implement the Model Act on Agricultural Marketing, but also revised these Model Acts in 2017 and then in 2018. And finally, the central government came up with 3 farm laws, which was introduced as an ordinance and then later passed by the parliament. So considering the concerns on state registered APMC mandis, the central government in the year 2003 came up with the Model Act on Agricultural Marketing and made further amendments in the year 2017 and also in the year 2018. So these Model Act provided for direct sale of farm produce to contract farming sponsors. So this Model Act provided freedom to the farmers to sell their produce even outside the state registered APMC mandis. Further, this Model Act provided for setting up of special market for specified agricultural commodities, mostly perishable goods. Further, it permits private person, farmers and consumers to establish new markets for agricultural produce in any area. So we can see this Model Act effectively provided for an alternative forum to the farmers to sell their produce outside the state registered APMC mandis. Further, this Model Act provides for a single levy of market fee on the sale of notified agricultural commodities in any market area. It replaces licensing with registrations of market functionaries, which would allow the market functionaries to operate in one or more different market areas. Further, it provides for establishment of market for consumers and also farmers to facilitate direct sale of agricultural produce to the consumers, and also provides for creation of marketing infrastructure from the revenue earned by the respective APMCs. Now, respective state governments did not adopt it entirely this Model Act on agricultural marketing. However, they chose some of the important provisions which suited their interest or which suited their requirement. So overall, this Model Act on agricultural marketing was never applied in whole by most of the states apart from Bihar, as Bihar government completely did away with its state APMC Act. Thus, this Model Act provides some freedom to the farmers to sell their produce directly to the contract sponsors or in the market set up by private individuals, consumers, or producers. So, effectively, by allowing to establish new market area, this Model Act increases competitiveness of the market of agricultural produce by allowing common registration of market intermediaries. And based on the Model Act, the central government introduced the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act of 2020. Now, important features of this act was that it allowed sale in trade areas or certain areas outside the registered state APMC mandis. Now, these trade areas could be a warehouse, cold storage, factory premises, farm gates, etc. So, through freedom of sale to the farmers for their agricultural produce, this act provided an alternative selling option for the farmers. So, based on this act, the farmers could have directly sold their produce to exporters, traders, processors, etc. Further, this act provided for no fees or tax for the farmers to sell in the trade areas, and it also provided for a dispute resolution mechanism which was to be set up by the subdivisional magistrate in the form of conciliation board. So these are some of the highlights with respect to this particular farm law. However, there were also certain concerns as well, which are loss of revenue for the states as it does not provide for any fees or any levy or any tax. Poor density of agricultural market could not allow the farmers to actually sell their produce outside the registered mandis. Exploitation by private sector, especially with respect to determining of price. Lower impact on farmers' income as most of the farmers chose to sell their produce in the APMC mandis. And there were also certain constitutional challenges as this matter was pending in Supreme Court, especially with respect to constitutionality of the farm laws, as these farm laws were passed under the concurrent list. So based on these understandings, let's go through some of the problems which have been highlighted in this particular article. So the first problem here, it says that there is lack of inflow from private sector in agriculture, and an example can be said to be Bihar. Now, as the Bihar government did away with its state APMC Act, however, private investment did not flow into the agricultural market in Bihar. Now, Bihar did away with the APMC Act way back in 2006. Not much private investment has flown in the agricultural sector. In fact, the exploitation of farmers has increased in Bihar after 2006. Further, even the private sector in Bihar did not invest in warehousing or on logistics for farm produce. So despite Bihar doing away with state APMC Act, little presence of private investment in agricultural sector was felt. Similarly, Maharashtra delisted fruits and vegetables from the ambit of APMCs in 2016. However, so far, the inflow of private investment has been only marginal. So the first problem can be said to be lack of inflow from private sector in agriculture. Now the second problem highlighted by the author is that so far there is no substitute for mandi tax for investment in rural infrastructure by the new farm laws, as the new farm law had done away with the fees or tax for selling in trade areas. So the money collected by mandi through levies could not be invested in its overall infrastructural development. Now the third point highlighted by the author is regarding the grievance redressal mechanism as proposed in the new law. The author says that the grievance redressal mechanism through the subdivisional magistrate seems weak and mostly in favor of corporate interest. And based on this, the fourth problem is that these farm laws seems to benefit corporate houses rather than the farmers or the farmers cooperatives or the farmers producer companies. So these are some of the problems which have been highlighted in this particular article regarding farm laws. Now another point to be noted here is that since these laws allows for sale in trade areas outside registered state APMCs, so farmers fear this might be the step towards dismantling of state APMCs. And they also fear that once state APMCs are dismantled, then they will have to depend on the market prices, which at times may even be lower than the MSPs or minimum support price. So these can be said to be the concern of farmers, especially with respect to farm laws. Thus, this article becomes important mainly from the perspective of our mains and prelims examination, as questions with respect to these farm laws, concerns, and also about state registered APMCs can be asked by UPSC. With this, let's take up the next article for discussion. The next news to be taken up appears as an editorial on page number 6. It says, "Error corrected. Laws should not be interpreted in a way that destroys the intent behind them." And this editorial particularly talks about Section 7 of the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. And Section 7 of POCSO Act defines sexual assault on a child below 18 years. Now, a child, according to the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, is any person, that is boy or girl, who is below 18 years of age. So, Section 7 of this POCSO Act defines sexual assault on a child, which can be a boy or a girl. Now, regarding the error, this editorial talks about a decision of Bombay High Court. It says that the Nagpur bench of Bombay High Court had said that sexual assault of a child would require skin to skin contact, that is physical contact, and without physical contact, it would be difficult to prove the aspect of sexual assault by an accused. Now, this decision completely ignored the aspect of intent, and this point was further highlighted by Supreme Court of India. So according to this High Court judgment, it said that absence of physical contact did not amount to sexual assault. Now this had various repercussions, as number one, it provided leniency to those accused, and those accused went scot-free. So the accused guilty of sexual assault were not charged under Section 7 of POCSO Act, as there was lack of skin to skin or physical touch. So the problem here was that despite their wrongful intention, their act did not fit the criteria of sexual assault as provided under the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. Now this error has been corrected by the Supreme Court of India. Now before going through the Supreme Court judgment, let's understand the meaning of the term assault as has been defined under the Indian Penal Code. So before understanding the definition of assault, let's go through some of these illustrations which explains the definition. So the first illustration says that A shakes his fist at Z, and by shaking his fist at Z, he makes Z believe that A is about to strike Z. So in that sense, we can say that A has committed an assault. It then says that A begins to unloose the muzzle of a ferocious dog, intending or knowing it likely that he may thereby cause Z to believe that A is about to cause the dog to attack Z. So again, A has committed an assault upon Z, as A makes Z believe by loosening the muzzle of the ferocious dog that the dog will attack Z. So the definition of assault in IPC says that whoever makes any gesture or any preparation intending or knowing it to be likely that such gesture or preparation will cause that person present to apprehend that he who makes this particular gesture or preparation is about to use criminal force to that person is said to commit an assault. So in an assault, gesture and preparations are important. However, this definition also does not talk about any physical contact. So the Supreme Court said that interpreting a particular definition in a very narrow sense will end up defeating the very purpose of the act. So the Supreme Court held that restricting the interpretation of the words touch or physical contact to skin contact would be a narrow interpretation of Section 7, and if such a narrow interpretation is accepted, it would frustrate the very object of the act, which is it will defeat the objective of the POCSO Act. It further says that the judgment sets right not only the misinterpretation of the statute, but also underscores the point that core ingredient of a sexual offense is sexual intent behind such offense. And accordingly, the court held that an interpretation should not be destructive of the intention of the law. Thus, the Supreme Court corrected not only the misinterpretation provided by Bombay High Court, but also incorporated the aspect of intent with respect to sexual assault. So this aspect highlighted by Bombay High Court, that sexual assault would need or would require skin-to-skin contact, holds no longer true, as an act of the person will be determined through their intent. Now this topic becomes important primarily from the perspective of GS paper 2 under social justice. Now the important highlights of this act has been provided in the PDF as well. However, let's go through some of the important points. So it says that the Government of India is a signatory to the Convention on Right of the Child, as this was adopted by the General Assembly of United Nations. And this convention prescribes a set of standards to be followed by all state parties in the best interest of the child. And accordingly, Government of India enacted the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. Further, this act protects a child against several forms of sexual abuse, including trafficking, pornographic materials, and also avoids re-victimization of a child. It further says that under this act, a person is guilty of using a child for pornographic purposes also if the person uses a child in any form of media for the purpose of sexual gratification. Now, different types of sexual abuse has been defined in this act, which includes sexual harassment, sexual assault, penetrative sexual assault, and also aggravated penetrative sexual assault. Further, the act also establishes special court for trial of such offences, where each district shall designate a sessions court to be a special court, and this special court shall be established by the state government in consultation with the Chief Justice of the particular High Court. The act further says that the court shall, as far as possible, shall complete the trial within 1 year, and the trial shall be held in camera and in the presence of child's parents or any person trusted by the child. Now, the meaning of the term in camera means that the trial will not be held in public. It further says that if an offense has been committed by a child below the age of 18 years of age, then such offenses shall be dealt under the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act of 2000. So these are some of the important highlights with respect to protection of children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. Thus, this article becomes important both from the prelims and mains perspective, from the perspective of social justice and vulnerable sections, including such children. Now, the last news to be taken up for discussion appears on page number 10. It says, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh police seen as less sensitive according to a survey. And this survey was with respect to Smart Policing Index. Now, this survey has been prepared by Indian Police Foundation, which is a non-governmental organization. Now, as you can see, this is the Indian Police Foundation Smart Policing Index of 2021. And they have provided a score from the range of 1 to 10. Where the score of 10 depicts the highest level of satisfaction for a citizen with respect to their police. However, on the other side, it also reflects sensitivity, or rather lack of sensitivity by the police towards its citizens. And as per this ranking, as you can see, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh sits at the bottom of the rank, having a score of 5.74, that is Bihar having a rank of 5.74 and UP having a rank of 5.81. Now, the parameters for these scores are competence-based indicators, that is perception index of police sensitivity, perception index of strict and good behavior of the police, perception index of accessibility by the police, perception index of police responsiveness, perception index of helpful and friendly policing, and perception index of technology adoption. Now, all these parameters becomes a part of competence-based indicators. Now, regarding values-based indicators, it highlights perception index of integrity and corruption-free services, perception index of fair, unbiased and lawful policing, and perception index of police accountability. And with respect to trust, this becomes an overarching element. So, Indian Police Foundation's Smart Policing Index can be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 2 and also GS Paper 4 with respect to ethics and integrity. Now, on similar ideas, we discussed an article which appeared in the Hindu newspaper dated 19th August 2021. The name of the article was "The Police We Need," where even the Chief Justice of India had highlighted that threat to human rights is highest in police station. And accordingly, we discussed nature of human rights violation by the police, which includes non-registration of FIR, misuse of powers of arrest, misuse of power to shoot to kill orders, torture during police custody, custodial deaths, and custodial rape and sexual harassment. So these can be said to be the nature of human rights violation by the police. Further, we also discuss certain remedies which are needed to improve the functioning of the police, which included need for attitudinal changes among police officers, improving in-service conditions for police personnel, especially for police officers in the lower level of hierarchy, the need for institutional arrangements, improving professionalism among police officers, and also focusing more on forensic science to extract information rather than through torture. So these were some of the aspects discussed in the DNS dated 19th August 2021, which you can go through again. And regarding the IPF Smart Policing Index of 2021, Andhra Pradesh has the highest score or the best score of 8.11, followed by Telangana and Assam having a score of 8.10 and 7.89 respectively. So this news should be seen mostly from the prelims perspective. However, certain aspects of it can be utilized while writing an answer for your mains, especially on police reforms. With this, let's take up the question for the day. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. It says, with reference to the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020, consider the following statements. First, under this act, the farmers have been given the freedom to sell their agricultural produce from farm gates, factory premises, and warehouses without any payment of market fee. Second, it provides for setting up of price information and market intelligence system for the benefit of farmers. And third, the act bars the jurisdiction of civil courts in entertaining disputes. So the question is, which of the statements given above are correct? Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements. President's address to the first session of Parliament is provided through parliamentary conventions. No, this is incorrect, as this provision has been provided under Article 87. Governors does not have such addressing powers. No, this is also incorrect, as governor's power has been provided under Article 176. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So the correct answer becomes D, that is neither 1 nor 2. With this, we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS.